Alright, what's up? It's Jared with the Wolfpack for life. Right now what we're doing is we're about to prep some pork butts. This is the old favorite of pretty much everybody who's ever done or had barbecue. More than likely you've had a Boston butt, a pork butt. This is a pork butt shoulder. Traditionally you would get a whole picnic shoulder, which would be both the ham side of the shoulder and the actual pork shoulder itself, which is the Boston butt. Nothing wrong with the ham, nothing wrong with the whole shoulder, guys. Love it. That's actually one of the ways I grew up cooking on a pit, open flame pit with my grandfather was, whole shoulders over an open fire. I prefer the pork butt. I like the amount of fat that's in these. I like the protein to fat ratio. I also love that you normally receive a money muscle on each cut. We refer to the money muscle we refer to it as the money muscle because it is literally the best part of a pork butt that you're ever going to have. It's an extremely marbled piece of a loin that's left from the butcher process. And this will be your primo cuts all day, every day. The competition's trail, we call it the money muscle because this is how we win the money. All right, so we removed our pork butts from the cryovac. We're going to go ahead and rinse them. Remember that on these large cuts of protein, any type of bacterial buildup or pathogen buildup is going to be on the exterior. It's not going to be able to penetrate the porous fiber of the meat itself. So we're getting the old rancid blood from the packaging off of it. We're also going to make sure that we're getting off any additional potential harmful bacteria. Don't have to be scientific with this, just giving it a quick rub down with some cool water. Don't want to get hot water here. We don't want to get carried away. We're just rinsing off any additional here. Now I'm going to let it drain for a second. I don't want a bunch of excess water on my cutting board. So on these pork butts, as you've heard me say before, we're not going to trim any excess off that we don't have to. Anything that's basically not going to serve us or is going to somehow hinder our appearance, tenderness, or our flavor has got to go. Again, I don't like to overdo it on these. I'm just trying to accentuate the features that are going to be the best cuts, primarily the money muscle. So I want to use the feel method. Any piece of fat or anything that I feel that feels some type of way as far as hard or too thick or something like that, I'm going to identify it now and cut on it here in a moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this extra flap of fat out of here. This is right behind the bone joint. And I'm just going to simply work that right out of there. All that's doing is getting in the way. This is going to end up on a piece of pulled pork. We don't want any gristle. We don't want anything other than the actual pork product itself. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to highlight my money muscle, and I'm going to do so by removing some of the excess fat around it. I want this piece ready to just cut off from the butt and slice. I like to slice this into a medallion. This is kind of like the center cut piece. This is what you would give a judge if you were being judged on it. This is what you would give your mother-in-law if you were at a family outing. This is the money piece. So I'm just removing the fat that's around it that I don't need so that I'm ready to just remove this from the butt once I've got it at the temperature I desire. I'm trying to be nice and gentle. I don't want to remove any of the money muscle if at all possible. Using the excess as a handle, I'm using slight pressure here, pulling away from the cut to give me a clear line of sight of what I'm trying to trim. I'm continuing to trim this pork butt up. I've started to extenuate the shape of my money muscle. I don't want to get overzealous with this and start carving away chunks of my pork. I'm just trying to create a profile that you can see here. This is kind of like a tube, if you will, that we're going to take and cut this off like so once we've completed the cook. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to take a nice light score across here, and all I'm doing is just notifying my later self, hey, this is where the money muscle is. Because again, when you start getting great bark formation, you're going to lose track of what side is what on this. All you're going to be able to know is this is a bone and this is a fat cap. So I've got this side of the prep done with my money muscle. I'm going to flip this over. I don't have a ton of extra fat here on the cap of this butt. I don't want to take off any more than I need to. I've just got a little bit here on the edge. This is going to end up getting overdone and crispy and causing problems for me later on if I decide I want to wrap this butt to preserve flavor, to preserve a specific color that I like. And I'm mainly taking this off. I don't like the way that this fat feels. It's really hard. It feels kind of cartilagey. So it's got to go. Remember, if it feels uncomfortable or hard or anything like that raw, it's not going to change when you cook it. So don't set yourself up for failure and leave something on here that you're going to cook and then maybe miss, maybe look over later on. And then again, it always happens. The one person that you don't want to get something like that, they will. Your mother-in-law is going to bite into this and break her tooth on something that you left in here. So I'm not going to take off too much more of this fat cap. I really want this to help protect the butt as we cook it. So I'm done with this one. I'm going to go ahead and bring my other pork butt up here. As you can see, fair amount of fat marbling throughout it. Quality meats bought at TNT Butcher Shops in McDonough and Locust Grove, Georgia. So all I'm doing here again is quickly, I'm just taking some fat, just excess stuff, just stuff that's not attached really well, that's just going to end up being in the way later. I don't want to remove anything that's going to add flavor through rendering. Just removing some extra loose, flappy fat. And I'm going to extenuate my money muscle. I've located my money muscle. I'm going to throw a knife at myself just to make sure I'm paying attention. And then I'm going to slowly ease some of this excess fat away from this money muscle, exposing some beautifully marbled pork. Also, a benefit of this money muscle is that it's the exterior side of your butt. It's going to get a lot of smoke. It's going to get a lot of color from your rub. So, using a quality rub like a Wolfpack seasoning is very important because it can really help you not only with your flavor profile, but it can help you a lot with attaining and retaining great color. So I've peeled enough fat away from that money muscle now that I feel pretty comfortable with it. Don't like this little piece of fat here. That didn't feel very good. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that from the situation. Now, from time to time with pork, you'll end up with some silver skin left over. That's from the butchering process. It's natural with the pork. You want to remove that if it's not going to completely change the geometry of your pork. I say that, you can start topically removing it, and you can see pretty quick that a lot of times they continue on deeper and deeper. And you can go down a rabbit hole chasing this little piece of silver skin and tendon, next thing you know, you're going to have 2 pieces of pork. So we're going to stop while we're ahead. We've noted this. You know, you can go ahead if you want and just remove what you see. But again, don't fall down the trap of, oh, I'm going to follow this till it's over, and then cut your butt in two. So I'm pretty happy now with how much fat I've taken off the top. Again, being a pork butt, I want a nice, rich combination of rendered fat with my pork. Not over trimming here. We've got a nice, even fat cap. Nothing's feeling too hard or out of place. We've just got some, you know, stringy, flappy fat that we're going to remove. Get that out of the equation now. Got a little bit of thickness here on this part of the butt. Without getting too crazy with it, I'm just going to turn my knife in a downward motion to kind of keep the same kind of shape on the edge of my butt. Shape of my butt. So I've got these little edges of fat ridge. I'm going to go ahead and gently remove those. I don't want to dig. I'm not trying to create crevices beside my money muscle. I want a nice, smooth, easy cut. So again, I've got plenty of fat still here. It feels very soft. It feels very pliable. I have found a little more fat on the front side of my money muscle that I'm going to work on gently evicting. Got a little bit of a fat squatter here. It's got to go. Don't make the rules, just enforce them. Got to go. All right, so now that we're trimmed up, now we're going to work on getting a nice, flavorful, juicy injection in this pork. Once we inject it, we're going to rub it down with some Wolfpack seasonings and let this sit overnight and get it ready to put on the pit first thing in the morning. All right, so now we're about to use this absolute tractor trailer of an injector on these pork butts. I don't want to get super crazy. There's limited return if you're going to just sit here and fill this thing up. I'm mainly going on the outside pieces of meat, my money muscle, all the pieces around my bone. That's where I'm going to get the most flavor from this injection. The deep interior of this butt is going to be what it's going to be regardless of what seasoning, injection. The deep center is the deep center. It is what it is. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to start right behind my money muscle. I'm going to come in and I'm going to load that area up. Go ahead and lay it down. One big injection into the money muscle. Spritz it all over yourself. Wake up. Staying mainly on the exterior side of the pork. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying not to inject the interior of the pork. I'm just saying focus your efforts on the exterior, the outside pieces, because that's where you're going to get the most benefits from using this injection. I'm going to give myself a little more pressure here. And now that I've gone around the outside, again, I'm going to the center. I'm just going to give it a couple good pumps. Keep in mind, there's a bone in here, so before you go full stabby, don't break your needles off slamming into this bone. Now I'm going to do a quick turnover. At an angle, I'm going to go in under the fat cap, and I'm going to add a little bit of injection. I'm not trying to get too crazy here, really just trying to tighten it up, give it a little bit of extra underneath this fat cap. As this fat starts to render, this is really going to help that process. So this one's got plenty of injection in it for now. I'm going to swap over to this smaller butt here. Again, I'm going to locate my money muscle. This is going to be my prime target. I'm going to come in right over the top of it here and give it a couple good full pumps here. Lay it back down. I'm coming in on this side of my money muscle and right in the center of it until it gets good and tight. Once it's tight, I'm moving around to the outside edges. Working around all around my bone, being gentle not to break my needles. Nothing can ruin a party like trying to get prepped and get your meat ready to go in the smoker, and then you just snap your injector needles. You've been sitting here jazzing up your product, telling your buddy about how good your pork butt is. And then he shows up and you can't tell him you broke your injector needle, and that's why it's no good this time. So be gentle, don't break your stuff. Oh boy, she's locked on, she's stuck. Sometimes that throttle gets stuck, you just gotta hold on. I think there's a Kenny Chesney song about that. Don't quote me though. So I've got this side, I'm going back to my fat side. I'm gonna come in at an angle here. Really just trying to get a little bit of injection underneath this fat layer. Alright, so that's good enough for me. Now I'm going to set these in the sink, let them drain for just a second. I don't want them to dilute my rub too much. And while those drain, I'm going to talk for a second about these rubs. We're going to be using our Wolfpack Seasonings Signature Series. What this is a high-performing all-purpose rub with a little bit of a heat profile. When I say heat, I don't mean pepper, I don't mean hot. We designed all of our lineup around the way that your tongue works, the way that you accept flavor into your taste buds. That goes in an order of salt, sodium, any type of a heat, Scoville, any type of pepper, and then the sweetness, the sugar. So, you know, with this all-purpose version of our Signature Series, what this is going to do is this is going to add a little bit of heat that's going to carry the rest of our flavors to the finish line. It's not going to be hot. It's just going to be a slight warmth when you taste the flavor profile, which is really going to help bring in the peppers, you know, the other flavoring spices that we put into this. So use liberally. On our second butt, we're going to use our Wolfpack Seasonings Big Bad Bark. And again, crafting all of these to be somewhat of an all-purpose. This could be good on anything that you put it on. Specifically, the name Big Bad Bark comes from, we used a little bit higher grade, higher mesh of a pepper, a little bit bigger pieces of pepper. We also added some additional sugar content in this. What that's going to do is it's going to create an impeccable bark. This is going to seal up your cut of meat great. That little bit of sweetness that we added is going to also help bring out other notes in your product. Maybe sweetness from your injection, sweetness from your sauce. And like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to compare contrast. We've done everything the same to this point. We're going to do everything the same after this point. We're going to take our Big Bad Bark to have a little bit of a sweeter hit on one. We're going to take our Signature Series, have a little bit of a kick on the other one. We're going to compare, contrast what the difference is for us on those. So I'm actually going to start with the Big Bad Bark here. When you're seasoning up a pork butt, be generous. Love thy neighbor. Over-season your pork butt. I'm just kidding. Don't over-season it. But you need a good amount of seasoning because you're going to end up losing some of this. Some of this is going to soak up. Some of this is going to fall off in transit. Some of it's going to end up in the pan. You want to get nice coverage on this. So I'm going to turn it fat side down when I cook it. And I'm getting a nice, even, medium to heavy coat of this Big Bad Bark on here. Now, if you start seeing the concentration of pepper or any of the other seasonings, you might want to take and give it a little quick shove. With the mesh of the pepper being a little bit heavier, sometimes as you're shaking it, things move around disproportionately. So now I'm going to turn up on the side and I'm going to shake this bad boy, give it plenty of love on the sides. This is going to be premium meat right here. All of this is the beloved outside pork. This is going to get all the smoke exposure, all the seasoning exposure, all the rendering exposure. So don't forget to give some love and put seasoning around the edges of your butt. We want to fully encase our meat product with this seasoning. once we produce a bark around this, it's going to hold in all of our flavors that we've worked so hard for and just get a beautiful color on it. So I've got all the edges except the money muscle. I like to end with the money muscle. I like to be very even with my money muscle. I'm thinking of this of being the premium cut. So I don't want to get too heavy in any places. I want to make sure it's got good coverage. This cut mark that I've made to identify it later in the cook, I want to make sure I get plenty of seasoning down in here. All right. So now I've done that, I'm just going to get a nice coating on top of this. And again, we're trying to color within the lines. You know, rub's expensive. You don't want to just throw this down the drain. However, you know, you can't cry over spilled rub. It's just the game. So now I've got this one rubbed down. I'm going to let it sit here. Moving on to our signature series rub, we're going to take this, give our butt a nice little coat of love with this right here. Do not forget, this has a little heat to it. So you don't want to get overzealous with it, but it's not real heat. It's not push you away heat. It's heat that's going to transfer the flavor for you. But again, keeping in mind that we don't want to overdo it with any of our rubs. There's enough flavor in these to go around. We just want to get a good enough coating to add flavor and produce a bark. So I'm going to bring her up here and I'm going to use a little bit of my skill. I don't want to cross with my other rubs, so I'm going to hold it up. And I'm basically taking my signature series and giving it a light dust. I'm going to come a little higher up, maybe 12 inches. And I'm just giving her a run over, trying to be as even as I can. Don't want to just throw this stuff down the drain. All right, got my signature series there. I'm going to grab my edges real quick. Saving my money muscle for last. Just total coverage is what you need. Now you don't want to skimp, you don't want to just lightly dust over it because you're going to be disappointed in your flavor. You want to make sure you're adding flavor without caking. I'm going to roll this big Bertha around. Pro tip, use the bone to give yourself a little structure to hold on to this thing. Now I'm onto my money muscle. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this side of it here. Giving this a little bit of a rub and a pat. Flipping over to my protein side. I'm going to give it a nice even coating here. Alright, so a little bit of a close-up here. You can see we've marked them with the bottle themselves, but you can see the stark difference between the rubs. Coloration from the get-go. You've got a little bit reddish of a color with your signature series. You're a little bit more of an earthen brown color with your Big Bad Bark. You can also see, as previously mentioned, the increased amount and the increased size of the pepper with the Big Bad Bark. That's going to aid us in our bark formation. You can also see that there's black pepper in the signature series. Black pepper is essential for bark formation and flavor. It helps carry all the other seasonings to the finish line. So another thing you can see here is this isn't spectacularly clean. There's a little bit of extra rub down here in the bottom. It's okay. We want to make sure that we get our butts seasoned properly. If we have a little bit of a loss, it's not the end of the day. You can't win the war without some casualties. So now, again, I prefer to let these sit for about 8 hours if I can. You can go directly on the smoker, but that's exactly what we're going to do is let them sit. We're going to give these anywhere from 8 to 12 hours just to soak up, enjoy some of this rub, and then we're planning on hitting these in the smoke first thing in the morning. Stay tuned, and we'll see you at the pit.